That exhaustion you feel, it's not your body, it's your shadow. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung, welcome to Spiritual Wisdom. Today, we're diving deep into a truth that most people overlook. Your exhaustion might not be physical, it might be spiritual. What if your burnout isn't just about doing too much, but about suppressing too much? According to Jung, the hidden cause may be your shadow self, the parts of you you've rejected, ignored, or silenced. This isn't just psychology, it's spiritual wisdom in action. Are you ready to face the part of you that's been crying out for attention beneath the surface? Drop a comment below. I'm ready to meet my shadow. And let's begin this journey of real healing and self-reclamation together. 1. Soul-level exhaustion isn't physical. It's psychological and spiritual. There is a kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. It's not in your muscles, not in your bones. It's rooted in your soul. You wake up tired, go through the day on autopilot, and collapse into bed, wondering why rest never feels like recovery. This isn't about overwork or lack of sleep. It's about something deeper, more invisible, and far more powerful. It's the fatigue that comes from living a life that isn't truly yours. Men are often expected to be steady, helpful, agreeable, and the one who holds everything together. So you learn to wear a mask. You suppress your irritation, swallow your anger, silence your needs. You show up for everyone but yourself. You become the dependable one, the strong one, the fixer. And while the world might thank you for that, your inner world begins to crack. That quiet ache behind your smile, that's not a weakness. That's the soul calling out from beneath the persona you've been forced to perform. Carl Jung called this the price of repressing the shadow of the hidden, rejected parts of ourselves that society tells us to bury. Your shadow holds everything you've been taught to hide: your rage, your desire, your grief, your needs. It's everything you couldn't be because you were too busy becoming what others needed. But what you repress doesn't disappear. It waits. It waits in the dark corners of your psyche, feeding on your silence, draining your energy. And one day, it speaks not in words, but in symptoms. Burnout, numbness, emotional fatigue. That's not your body breaking down. That's your soul screaming through it. This kind of tiredness is spiritual. It's psychological. It's the cost of not living in alignment with who you truly are. Jung warned that the unconscious, if left unexamined, will run your life and you will call it fate. But what if the life you think you're meant to live is just a long reaction to what you were told was acceptable? What if the very things you pushed away, your boldness, your truth, your sadness, are the keys to your vitality? When you push your shadow into hiding, you don't become stronger, you become divided. And it is this internal split that slowly bleeds your energy dry. Healing begins not when you try to escape the exhaustion, but when you recognize its root. The answer is not more rest, it's more truth. It's not more time off, it's more inner alignment. The moment you stop pretending, stop performing, and start reclaiming the parts of yourself you once abandoned, that's when your energy begins to return. Not because life is easier, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. Your burnout isn't a flaw to fix, it's a message to hear. It's your soul reminding you that being endlessly helpful, agreeable, and pleasant at the cost of your truth is not sustainable. It's a quiet protest from the self you left behind. And the path to wholeness begins the moment you stop ignoring it. Because the real reason you're so tired, it's not your body, it's your shadow. And it's been waiting for you to come home. Have you ever felt tired in your soul? Not your body. If this kind of exhaustion speaks to you, share your experience in the comments so others know they're not alone. And if you're just beginning to explore this deeper kind of fatigue, simply comment, "I'm listening." Let's start this healing journey together. 2. Repression of the shadow drains psychic energy. Carl Jung taught that libido is not merely sexual energy, but the total psychic energy that fuels our ability to live, create, and connect with others. Every time you suppress your truth to avoid conflict, nod along to please others, or silence your needs to maintain harmony, you're not keeping the peace, you're spending energy. Not physical energy, but something far more precious, your soul's vitality. That fatigue you feel at the end of the day, the heaviness behind your smile, the emptiness even after a full night's rest. It may not be stress or burnout from work. It may be the cost of living a life too far from your real self. This is what happens when you live through your persona, the mask you wear to be agreeable, helpful, and socially acceptable. You start mistaking performance for presence. You play the role so well that even you forget it's a role. But the body remembers. And so does the shadow, the hidden part of you that holds your unmet needs, your anger, your instincts, your passion. The more you exile this part, the more exhausted you become. Because repression is not passive. It requires constant psychic labor. It's like holding a door shut with all your strength while something powerful keeps pushing from the other side. Eventually, your arms tremble. Your focus slips. You burn out, not from too much activity, but from too much pretending. Take a man like Jason, calm, dependable, always the one who smoothed things over. At work, he was the go-to guy for peacekeeping. At home, he never raised his voice. Everyone admired his composure. But deep down, Jason was numb. He couldn't feel joy, couldn't sleep without a glass of wine, and couldn't remember the last time he felt truly alive. That's because he was living in exile from his own soul. His libido, his life force, wasn't gone. It was trapped inside the shadow he'd locked away long ago in the name of being nice. Carl Jung warned that this is the most energy-intensive work a human being can do, to suppress the truth of who they are. And when the shadow can no longer speak through words, it speaks through the body through burnout, illness, and chronic fatigue. These aren't weaknesses, they are signals. Signals that the price of your persona has become too high, that the energy you're spending on being liked is costing you the energy to be whole. The path forward is not about abandoning kindness or becoming selfish. It's about integration. It's about making space for your entire self, especially the parts you were told were too much, too angry, too sensitive, too honest. You do not need to dismantle your life to begin this healing. You only need to tell yourself the truth. Where do you feel the most drained? Who do you become when you're trying to be accepted? What part of you is always waiting for permission to speak? The answers to these questions are the keys to your vitality. The more honest you are, the more energy you reclaim. Your shadow is not the enemy. It's your buried power. And your exhaustion is not a flaw. It's a clue. 3. The nice person role is energetically unsustainable. You've spent so much of your life trying to be the good one, the kind one, the agreeable one, the peacemaker, and no one ever told you how spiritually expensive that role would become. Day after day, you monitor the emotional landscape of every room you walk into, adjusting yourself to make others comfortable. You anticipate their reactions before you speak. You avoid saying no because you don't want to hurt feelings, and you bury your frustration so deeply that you start forgetting it was ever there. But your body hasn't forgotten. Your soul hasn't forgotten. And the exhaustion you carry is not from your schedule. It's from the performance. Carl Jung warned that what we repress becomes our shadow, and what we repress will eventually find a way to express itself, usually through discomfort, burnout, or breakdown. So while you smile and nod, while you make everyone else feel safe, while you play the role of the emotionally responsible adult in every relationship, your inner world starts to crumble. You become like a beach ball held beneath the surface, colorful on the outside, but under incredible pressure. It takes so much effort to keep it submerged, and the moment you relax, it comes flying back up. That beach ball is your shadow. It's your anger, your truth, your unmet needs, your desire to be seen as more than just the strong one. And every time you push it back down, you lose spiritual energy you need to create, to heal, to grow. That's why you're tired, even after a full night of sleep. That's why you feel hollow, even when nothing is technically wrong. That's why you smile, while secretly wishing someone would just ask, "How are you really?" But no one asks, because you've trained the world to believe you're always fine. You've become the therapist, the fixer, the reliable one. And in the process, you've abandoned the parts of you that need to be held, to be listened to be angry, to be real. This isn't about being selfish. This is about being whole. Spiritual healing doesn't come from being more accommodating. It comes from integrating what you've rejected. You cannot truly awaken until you've embraced the parts of you that you've disowned. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That darkness is not evil. It's an unexpressed truth. When you finally acknowledge the part of you that's tired of being agreeable, that's resentful of always giving, that's screaming behind your smile, you begin to reclaim your soul. You begin to understand that your burnout isn't a weakness. It's wisdom. It's your shadow telling you that the nice person costume no longer fits, that the performance is over, and it's time to come home to yourself. The spiritual path is not about perfection. It's about honesty. It's about removing the mask and saying, "This is me, whole, messy, divine." And in that space of truth, something miraculous happens and your energy begins to return. Your clarity sharpens. Your intuition strengthens. Because when your shadow is no longer a prisoner, your soul becomes free. So let go of the idea that being kind means being silent, that being spiritual means being passive, and that being a good person means being drained. You are allowed to say no without guilt. You are allowed to disappoint others in order to remain in alignment with yourself. And you are allowed required to honor your shadow if you want to live a life of spiritual integrity and true vitality. Because the real burnout isn't caused by doing too much. It's caused by abandoning too much of yourself. Are you tired of playing the nice person at the cost of your own energy? If you're ready, to reclaim your boundaries and speak your truth, comment below. I choose authenticity to begin your journey toward freedom and spiritual alignment. 4. Case study: Karen, the saint who's spiritually depleted. Karen's life looks admirable from the outside. She's warm, generous, always available. She never says no, never causes conflict, and never voices her true frustrations. But behind the praise and the polished surface is a soul that's quietly withering. She wakes up tired, not because she slept too little, but because her energy is bleeding from wounds she's been taught to ignore. Her fatigue is not physical, it's spiritual. This is not just tiredness. This is psychic depletion. Carl Jung warned that repressing the shadow self, the anger, the desires, the truth we've been conditioned to hide, is one of the most draining things a human can do. And that's exactly what's happening to Karen. Every time she smiles when she wants to scream, agrees when she wants to refuse, or gives when she has nothing left, she chips away at her vitality. Her exhaustion doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from being too little of who she truly is. The persona, Jung said, is the mask we wear to fit in. It's necessary but dangerous when over-identified with. Karen has become her mask. Her real self, the one with needs, instincts, and boundaries, has been silenced for so long that it only speaks now through fatigue, through the dull ache in her chest, through the brain fog that no supplement can fix. There is an energy leak within her, a spiritual hemorrhage that sleep cannot seal. And it's not unique to her. Many men live the same way. You work hard, provide, stay calm, keep the peace, but inside, something is dying. Not because you're weak, but because you're lying to yourself. You've cut off a part of your being, and that fragment the shadow demands to be felt. It doesn't care about politeness or success. It wants the truth. And until you face it, your soul will continue to cry out through your body. Karen's case is not about burnout from labor. It's about burnout from inauthenticity, from never allowing herself to be whole. She's not just tired, she's spiritually malnourished. Her shadow has become louder, not through words, but through symptoms. Her life is proof that ignoring the shadow doesn't make it disappear. It just changes the way it speaks. Through her story, we see a truth many avoid, that sometimes the most exhausting thing we do is pretend. Healing doesn't begin with more sleep, another vacation, or better time management. It begins with a reckoning, with asking yourself, where have I betrayed my own soul to be who the world wanted me to be? That question is the beginning of reclaiming your power. Because the soul cannot thrive in hiding. It only breathes in truth. 5. Fatigue is a sacred signal, not a flaw. Your exhaustion is not a weakness. It is sacred intelligence speaking through your body. It's not laziness, not failure, not some flaw in your personality. It is your soul signaling that something is profoundly off course. And as Carl Jung warned, what you suppress doesn't disappear. It becomes the shadow. That shadow is not just a metaphor. It's the container where your unspoken anger, buried needs, and silenced truth live. Quietly consuming your energy every day, you pretend they're not there. The more you smile through pain, say yes when you mean no, or silence your boundaries to be liked or accepted, the more you create a split inside yourself, and that inner split demands enormous energy to maintain. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep enough, but because you've spent years managing two versions of yourself, the one you present to the world and the one hidden in the dark, asking to be seen. There's a man who wakes up every morning, puts on a suit, kisses his kids, and drives to work with a hollow ache in his chest. Everyone says he's dependable, kind, the guy you can count on. But no one sees how crushed he feels inside. He doesn't know why he snaps at small things, or why joy feels like a distant memory. He thinks maybe he just needs a vacation. But what he really needs is integration. His burnout is not about overwork, it's about oversuppression. His soul is asking for truth, for permission to feel, for space to finally be honest. And until he gives that to himself, no amount of rest will bring him peace. Carl Jung made it clear. The shadow is not evil. It's simply the part of you you've not yet made conscious. And repressing it is one of the most exhausting things a human being can do. When you push away your anger, your grief, your desires, they don't leave. They live underground, pulling at your energy like invisible weights. This is why so many people feel tired all the time and can't explain it. Because they're not just tired, they're divided. And division creates suffering. But healing begins when you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What truth am I afraid to face?" Your burnout is a message, not a malfunction. It's your shadow asking you to stop performing, to stop hiding, to stop sacrificing your real self for an image that pleases others. You don't need to become someone else. You need to become whole. And that begins by letting yourself feel what you feel, need what you need, and speak what you've been too afraid to say. Your exhaustion is not the enemy. It's the doorway. It's the threshold between the false self and the true self. Let it guide you. Let it soften you. Let it lead you back to the places within that you once abandoned. As Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Don't be one of them. The real cure for burnout is not more sleep, it's more truth. Let your soul rest by letting it speak. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. What is your body trying to tell you right now? Let's honor our exhaustion, not as failure, but as sacred guidance on the path of spiritual awakening. 6. 3 core messages from your shadow. Through exhaustion, unexpressed anger is not just an emotional issue, it is a spiritual weight. Every time you silence your rage to appear agreeable, every time you smile while your boundaries are being violated, you're using an immense amount of psychic energy to suppress what needs to be acknowledged. Carl Jung warned us that what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. When you hold in your anger, it doesn't disappear. It transforms into exhaustion. It becomes chronic fatigue, irritation, restlessness, and even depression. It's like pressing down on a spring all day eventually. Your entire being tires from the force of resistance. Your burnout isn't laziness or weakness. It's the spiritual cost of denying a part of yourself that demands to be heard. And it doesn't stop there. Your soul has emotional and spiritual needs, just like your body needs food. If you're constantly pouring into others, showing up for everyone else, offering kindness and strength while never receiving the same for yourself, you will slowly deplete. Your soul needs solitude, silence, inspiration, and joy to thrive. Without these, you experience what can only be described as spiritual malnutrition. The symptoms are subtle. You stop laughing. You stop dreaming. You lose interest in things that once lit you up. The inner world begins to fade, replaced by obligation and performance. You forget the last time you created for fun, rested without guilt, or felt truly alive. Your spirit, once vibrant, becomes weary, not because you are broken, but because you are spiritually starved. The third and most devastating root of this deep exhaustion is living in misalignment with your true self. When your life is dictated by others' opinions, when you suppress your own voice to win approval, when your days are filled with roles you never chose, your soul begins to rebel. This rebellion doesn't look like fire and chaos. It shows up as numbness, as fatigue that won't go away, as a sense of drifting through life, never quite arriving anywhere. You feel like you're swimming against the current of your own being. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And when you live inauthentically, when you betray yourself just to be accepted, your soul sends signals. Burnout is one of those signals. It is not your body giving up. It is your spirit screaming that something is deeply wrong. This is not just mental or emotional exhaustion. It is a spiritual collapse. The shadow self, everything you've rejected, hidden, or disowned, isn't trying to ruin you. It is trying to wake you up. It speaks through weariness, through the weight in your chest, through the tears that rise for no reason. Integration is the path to healing. You must stop hiding from the parts of yourself you were taught to fear, because in truth, they hold the very energy, creativity, and power you've been missing. You are not broken. You are spiritually imbalanced from pretending too long. And the only way back is through honest self-inquiry and radical alignment with your soul. Let the shadow speak. Let your spirit breathe again. 7. 3 transformative practices to begin healing. The exhaustion you feel is not laziness, and it's not something you can fix with just a good night's sleep. It's deeper than that. It's the ache of your soul quietly asking you to stop pretending. You've spent years being the strong one, the dependable one, the man who doesn't complain. But beneath that calm exterior is a storm of unmet needs, unspoken truths, and a shadow you've worked tirelessly to suppress. Carl Jung warned us that what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. And for many men, this resistance becomes the root of burnout, not just a tired body, but a tired identity. Healing starts not with doing more, but with remembering who you are beneath the noise. The first practice that initiates this healing is the sigh of surrender, a double inhale followed by a long, slow exhale while silently saying, "I surrender. I am ready to listen." It's not just a breath, it's a signal to your nervous system that the war within is ending. Your body, which has carried so much tension and false strength, finally gets to soften, to release the armor you've worn for too long. And in that moment of breath, your soul speaks not through words, but through relief. This is followed by the practice of journaling to your fatigue, where you sit with your exhaustion not as a weakness to push through, but as a wise messenger. Write to it. Ask questions like, "What are you trying to protect me from?" Or, "What have I been ignoring?" Let it speak back without censorship. This isn't about crafting perfect sentences. It's about creating a dialogue with the part of you that has been silenced in your pursuit of being strong. You'll be surprised what your soul reveals when given permission to speak without judgment. The third practice is guilt-free rest, which may sound simple, but for many men, it's the hardest. Rest has been tied to guilt, to laziness, to failure. But true rest, the kind that restores your soul, is not a break from productivity. It's an act of remembrance. When you schedule time to do absolutely nothing, not to recover for more hustle, but because your soul deserves space to breathe, you are declaring to the world that your worth is not tied to your output. You are not a machine. You are not a checklist. You are a soul in a human body, and that soul needs stillness. These practices are not luxuries. They are acts of courage. In a society that celebrates burnout as a badge of honor, choosing to breathe, to write, and to rest becomes a radical return to self. And in that return, you'll find a man who is no longer chasing validation or hiding his pain. You'll find someone grounded, awake, and no longer ruled by the shadow he once feared. The exhaustion doesn't disappear overnight, but when you stop running from it and start listening to it, you begin to shift. You stop surviving and start remembering. And that remembrance is where the soul finally begins to heal. As we explore these 3 transformative healing practices, take a moment to honor your own journey. Your presence here is a sign that you're ready to listen to your body, speak to your soul, and rest without guilt. If you're committed to this path of deep self-care, comment below. I am ready to heal from within as a declaration of your inner shift. Let this be your first step toward wholeness. 8. Shadow work begins with listening, not fighting. You think you're just tired, but no amount of sleep seems to help. You wake up drained, carry a heaviness you can't explain, and tell yourself to push through. But this exhaustion isn't physical, it's spiritual. Carl Jung warned that the greatest drain on our energy doesn't come from work or effort. It comes from denying who we are. Shadow work begins not with fixing or fighting, but with listening. Listening to the quiet ache that says you've been showing up for everyone but yourself. Listening to the sighs you suppress, the anger you swallow, the needs you minimize. That bone-deep tiredness is not laziness. It's the consequence of living in a way that's misaligned with your soul. And the moment you stop resisting it and begin listening is the moment you reclaim your power. When you give yourself permission to rest, to feel, to say no, the energy you once used to suppress yourself becomes available for living more authentically. Karen used to be the nice one, helpful, agreeable, always available. But beneath her smile was a soul worn thin. Her body spoke first. Tension, fatigue, disinterest. She thought she just needed a vacation, but what she really needed was the truth. So she paused. She stopped volunteering on autopilot. She let silence fill the space where guilt used to speak. She picked up her old guitar and began playing again, not for anyone, just for herself. She wrote down her feelings, even the uncomfortable ones. She stopped saying yes when her body whispered no. Slowly, the joy returned. Not the kind you fake in public, but the kind that sneaks up on you when you're finally free. Her kindness didn't disappear, it deepened. It wasn't about obligation anymore. It came from alignment, from the soul. That's what Carl Jung meant by integration. Not perfection, but wholeness. The truth is, burnout is the receipt for abandoning yourself. Every time you perform instead of express, agree instead of feel, please Instead of honor, you pay in energy. And eventually, the cost is too high. So you renegotiate. You write a new contract with your life. My needs are valid, my rest is sacred, and I will not sacrifice myself to be understood. This isn't a quick fix. It's a slow unraveling of the masks you wear. It's choosing honesty over approval, peace over performance, soul over survival. And it begins now. Not with a resolution, but with one sacred choice. The sigh, the journal, or the rest. One breath that says, I am here. One truth on paper that says, this is how I feel. One quiet moment that says, I don't need to earn this pause. That's how the healing begins, not with force, but with presence. The more you listen, the more energy returns. Not energy to hustle, but to be. That's the true cure for burnout. To stop abandoning yourself and to remember the life you were meant to live. As we've explored today, the exhaustion you feel might not just be physical, it could be your shadow self calling out for your attention. Carl Jung reminds us that what we repress does not disappear. It only grows heavier in the dark. True healing begins when you stop running from yourself and start listening to the parts you've ignored. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. What part of you have you silenced for too long? If you found value in this video, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights like this. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next awakening. Your journey inward is the most powerful journey of all. Keep walking it with courage. Why the most spiritually awake are always misunderstood. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt like the more spiritually awake you become, the less others seem to understand you? You're not alone, and you're not broken. In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we'll explore why the most spiritually awakened souls are often misjudged, isolated, or labeled as too intense, and how this misunderstanding is actually a sign that you're evolving beyond collective illusions. If this resonates with your journey, drop a comment below. Have you experienced this kind of spiritual loneliness? Let's start the conversation and awaken together. 1. Your light activates the shadow in others. Spiritually strong men carry a quiet, grounded power that doesn't need to announce itself to be felt. It radiates from the soul, steady and unmoving, and that's precisely why it unsettles people. Carl Jung called this phenomenon the activation of the shadow, the hidden, rejected aspects of the self. When you walk into a room with authentic presence, you unintentionally become a mirror. Without uttering a word, your calm confidence stirs the unconscious in others. Suddenly, they feel exposed, not because you judged them, but because your light revealed what they've spent years trying to bury. And in that moment, their reaction isn't about you at all. It's about the parts of themselves they're not ready to face. That's why your silence can feel louder than noise, your honesty sharper than criticism, and your boundaries more threatening than confrontation. You don't have to speak truth to trigger resistance. Your soul does it for you. And because people aren't often taught how to sit with their own discomfort, they project it outward. You'll be labeled as distant, cold, or too intense. Not because you are, but because your authenticity breaks the illusion they're still clinging to. It's not that you are misunderstood by accident. It's that your very existence challenges their unspoken denial. Jung once said that people will go to great lengths to avoid facing their own souls. That includes rejecting those who remind them of what they've abandoned inside themselves. The rejection you experience isn't personal, it's spiritual. It's not your flaws that repel people. It's your healed parts. It's your refusal to play small, to dilute your essence for acceptance. The more aligned you become with your soul, the more incompatible you'll be with shallow connections and surface-level interactions. You'll begin to notice how your growth threatens those still committed to stagnation. You'll feel the emotional distance grow, not because you're pushing people away, but because they don't know how to meet you at the depth you now inhabit. This is the cost of spiritual awakening. It doesn't just open your eyes to truth, it exposes who's unable to walk beside it. And so, you begin to understand. The discomfort you cause is not a sign you've done something wrong. It's confirmation that your light is working. It's activating, revealing, shaking loose the unhealed within others. And while it can be painful to be the one who always gets misunderstood, misjudged, or misread, it's also proof that your soul is no longer dimmed by the fear of being different. You weren't made to fit in. You were made to reflect what others aren't yet ready to see. Not to shame them, but to remind them. Not to control them, but to liberate them. This is what the spiritually awake do, often in silence, often alone. And it is precisely in that sacred solitude that your soul grows stronger. Are you ready to embrace the light within you, even if it makes others uncomfortable? If so, comment below. I choose to shine, to affirm your commitment to walking in your truth, no matter who it unsettles. 2. You don't fit the roles others expect you to play. You've likely felt it since childhood, the subtle yet constant pressure to become what others find acceptable. You were expected to smile when it hurt, agree when your soul screamed no, and conform even when your spirit longed to break free. Carl Jung called this persona a social mask we wear to survive. But when you begin to awaken spiritually, that mask starts to suffocate you. You can no longer pretend. You stop performing, stop people-pleasing, stop deluding yourself to maintain peace that only serves others' comfort. And when you do, the world around you shifts. Not because you've become difficult, but because you've finally become honest. The very people who once praised your kindness now call you cold. They say you've changed, but in truth, you've simply returned to who you were before the world told you who to be. There's a man who spent decades as the nice guy in every room. He said yes when he meant no, worked late just to be liked, and silenced his ideas to avoid conflict. But one day, after studying Carl Jung's insights on individuation, the process of becoming your true self, he stopped. He stopped volunteering his time out of guilt. He started speaking his truth even when his voice shook. The shift was quiet, but powerful. People recoiled, claiming he'd become arrogant or selfish. But the truth was, he had finally aligned with his soul. And in doing so, he outgrew every room that required his silence to feel secure. This is what happens when you awaken. You no longer fit roles that ask you to play small. You stop laughing at shallow jokes. Stop tolerating manipulative energy. Stop engaging in connections that ask for your performance rather than your presence. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. And rejection at this point is not failure, it's purification. Your authenticity becomes too heavy for spaces built on illusion. Your truth exposes the falseness in others. They don't leave because you're wrong. They leave because you're real. And realness threatens every mask that still needs validation to survive. Carl Jung warned that becoming your true self is the privilege of a lifetime, but it often costs you the people who only loved the mask you wore. When you no longer bend yourself to be palatable, those who thrived on your self-abandonment will claim you've lost your way. But what you've really done is return home to the self that no longer needs permission to exist. If you feel alone after choosing the truth, remember this: your soul is not breaking, it is shedding. You are not difficult, you are deeply alive. You're not cold, you're clear. The world may mislabel your transformation, but your evolution is not theirs to define. Let them misunderstand. Let them leave. Let their discomfort expose the limits of who they were allowed to see you as. Your path is no longer about being accepted, it is about being aligned. Because as Carl Jung revealed, when you drop the persona, you don't just lose the role, you reclaim the soul. Have you ever stopped pretending just to be accepted? If so, share your story in the comments to inspire others on the same path. If not, comment, "I will live in truth," to declare your commitment to dropping the mask and embracing your authentic self. 3. You see what others don't want to see. You see what others deny, not because you're trying to dig too deep, but because your soul was designed to feel the undercurrents of life. Carl Jung called it the function of intuition, a spiritual radar that picks up on what the world tries to hide. You notice the fear behind someone's confidence, the sorrow behind their laughter, the tension in a room before a word is spoken. You are not imagining things. You are not being dramatic. You are spiritually awake, and that makes people uncomfortable. Because when you walk into a space with that kind of clarity, you become a mirror not of what people want to be, but of who they truly are. And most aren't ready to see that. So they call you too much, too sensitive, or overly intense, when in truth, you are simply refusing to play the game of pretending. You don't wear the mask, and that alone exposes everyone who still does. You've likely felt it, the slow distancing when you start speaking truth, the subtle tension when your silence becomes louder than small talk. It's not that you're cold, it's that you're present. And presence, when it's spiritually grounded, reveals everything. People will say you overanalyze, but what they mean is you see through them. You hear what isn't said, feel what's hidden, and sense what's buried. And because of that, you've probably been blamed for making things awkward when all you did was exist in truth. But clarity is not cruelty. Clarity is a spiritual gift. It shines a light in the places others are still trying to keep dark. And when the light hits something people aren't ready to deal with, they run, or worse, they project. They'll say you made them feel judged, even if you said nothing at all. Because your energy speaks, your presence confronts, and your soul doesn't tolerate the lie. You're not here to make people comfortable. You're here to wake them up, even if your truth shakes them. And while that might isolate you at times, it also protects your soul from drowning in inauthenticity. The spiritually awake don't fit into shallow waters. They weren't made to sit quietly while the world celebrates fake smiles and unspoken pain. You're not misunderstood because you're flawed. You're misunderstood because you're clear. And in a society that profits off confusion, distraction, and noise, clarity is threatening. That's why people push you away. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because there's something undeniably right with your spirit. And it exposes what others aren't ready to face within themselves. You feel like an outsider, not because you're lost, but because you found something real in a world built on illusion. You've found that truth cannot be silenced, and that the soul, once awakened, refuses to go back to sleep. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And yet, here you are, living in yours, fully awake, fully aware, and yes, often alone. But that solitude isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's protection. It's the sacred space where your intuition sharpens, your energy cleanses, and your vision becomes undeniable. So if they walk away, let them. Your spiritual truth was never meant for everyone. It was meant for those with eyes to see, hearts to feel, and souls ready to rise. If this message resonates with your inner knowing, don't hesitate to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments, especially if you've ever been told you see too much. Let's keep exploring this deeper truth together. 4. You love deeply, while others only know. Surface love. You don't love like the world loves you. Love with your whole being, with presence, essence, and soul. While others are busy loving from convenience, from comfort, or from loneliness, you love from depth. You offer a kind of love that doesn't just skim the surface, but dives straight into the marrow of connection. Your love does not flatter the ego. It speaks to the soul. It asks for honesty, emotional presence, and the courage to face one's own shadow. That's why people are drawn to you at first. They feel something ancient and rare in your energy, something that awakens their longing for realness. But the very moment they realize it requires them to show up fully, they flinch. You see, it's easy to love when love doesn't demand transformation, but your love does. And Carl Jung was right when he said that the deepest connection begins within, not with another. People want intimacy without the mirror, affection without vulnerability, and comfort without truth. But your soul doesn't allow that. You don't chase approval. You don't beg to be seen. You simply love with such honesty that it forces others to confront what they've buried. Most people don't know what to do with that kind of intensity. They misread your emotional availability as neediness, your honesty as pressure, your vulnerability as weakness. But what they're really reacting to is the confrontation of their own emotional shallowness. You've likely heard it more than once. You're too much. You care too deeply. You feel things too strongly. But what they're truly saying is, I can't meet you at the depth where your soul lives. Because your love isn't performative. It's not dressed in pretense or curated for comfort. It's real. You speak directly to the heart, not just through words, but through your silence, your energy, your steady presence. And in a world that's addicted to distraction and emotionally allergic to truth, that's a revolutionary act. You've stopped romanticizing surface-level bonds. You're no longer satisfied with being admired. You want to be understood. You no longer crave attention. You crave resonance. You don't just want someone to stay. You want someone who sees you and chooses to stand in the fire of truth with you. And that's what most people cannot do. They love the idea of depth, but not the responsibility that comes with it. They long for spiritual intimacy, but flee when the soul starts to speak. And still, you keep loving. Not because it's easy, but because it's who you are. You carry the weight of awakened love in a world that celebrates detachment and calls it independence. But you know better. You know that love without depth is just performance. You know that emotional safety is earned through truth, not illusion. And you've learned to let go, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for your own soul's integrity. Because when people can't meet you in truth, no amount of pretending will build a connection worth keeping. So even when it hurts, you walk away with grace, trusting that the one who is meant for your kind of love will not be frightened by its fire, but healed by it. If you resonate with this, speak it into existence. I love with soul, not surface. And if this message touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your truth in the comments. Your depth is needed here. 5. You don't seek approval, and that unsettles people. Most people are wired to seek approval. It's the glue that holds society together, unspoken rules shaped by likes, compliments, applause, and silent nods of acceptance. But when you detach from that system, when you stop needing validation to feel worthy, everything around you begins to shift. This isn't rebellion. It's what Carl Jung called individuation, the sacred journey of becoming your true self, untouched by the noise of the world. But here's the truth that nobody tells you. Stepping into your authenticity won't always earn you admiration. In fact, it may do the opposite. Your calm confidence, your refusal to people please, your silent strength, it unsettles those who still build their worth on what others think of them. To the spiritually asleep, your sovereignty feels like distance. Your grounded presence, which no longer begs to be seen, is mistaken for arrogance. And so, the more spiritually aligned you become, the more misunderstood you often are. You've likely seen this play out in real life. A man who used to be the entertainer, the go-to guy, the one everyone expected to show up and perform, begins to withdraw. Not because he's bitter, not because he's angry, but because he's finally done performing. He reads Jung, begins therapy, journals his pain, faces his shadows, and makes a quiet decision to stop chasing applause. The loud laughter becomes quieter. The constant texting fades. The need to be invited everywhere disappears. And as he grows into this new version of himself, people pull away. They say things like, "You've changed," or "You're not fun anymore." But what they really mean is, you no longer serve our need to be needed. This is the cost of self-ownership. And it is a cost that few are willing to pay. Because when you stop dancing for approval, you no longer belong to them, you belong to your soul. And that threatens the system. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he never said it would feel comfortable. In fact, it's the discomfort that tells you you're on the right path. The spiritual path isn't loud. It doesn't scream for attention. It whispers, detaches, and deepens. And that depth often scares those who only know how to live on the surface. So if people mislabel your independence as coldness, let them. If they confuse your clarity with ego, let them. They don't see what you had to overcome to get here. The nights of doubt, the hours of silence, the moments where you questioned your sanity for choosing the path of truth over belonging. What you've gained is beyond their understanding. You've reclaimed your energy. You've retrieved your soul. And that, in this world of noise and imitation, is the rarest form of power. Remember, not needing approval isn't rejection, it's resurrection. The resurrection of your soul's original rhythm, unchained from societal noise, unshaken by rejection, and unbothered by misunderstanding. It's the kind of power that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. And it is precisely because it is so rare that it is so feared. Let them misunderstand. Let them project. While they're busy trying to decode your silence, you'll be too busy becoming. If you're walking this path of inner truth and no longer seek approval to feel worthy, comment below. I choose alignment over approval. And if this message speaks to your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone else who's breaking free from the need to be understood. 6. Your energy heals, but not everyone wants to be healed. Your spiritual presence carries a vibration so pure, so grounded, that it doesn't have to speak to be heard. It doesn't need convincing to be felt. You walk into a room and something shifts, not because you impose, but because your energy touches invisible places in others that even they forgot existed. You are a living mirror, a catalyst. And while that may sound beautiful, the reality is far more complicated. Because healing, real healing, is not a soft glow. It's a wildfire. It burns through illusions, dredges up suppressed pain, and cracks open the protective shells people have built around their trauma. And this is where the misunderstanding begins. Most people are not running from you. They're running from what they feel when they're around you. Your spiritual energy doesn't just comfort, it confronts. It brings up memories, emotions, regrets, longings, and buried grief. The ones who are initially drawn to you often retreat without warning, not because you hurt them, but because they can no longer avoid the parts of themselves that your presence activates. Carl Jung's archetype of the wounded healer explains this dynamic with piercing truth. He believed that those who have been through the darkest nights of the soul become the most potent vessels for healing, not because they are flawless, but because they've earned their wisdom through pain. Your soul became medicine not by bypassing your suffering, but by walking through it, bleeding through it, and choosing to alchemize it. But that same medicine, when offered to those who are not ready, becomes too strong. They want healing to feel good. They want light without heat. They want clarity without discomfort. And when your spiritual vibration begins to awaken their shame, their self-abandonment, their avoidance, they either lash out or disappear. Not everyone who seeks your light is ready to be illuminated. Some just want your warmth, not your fire. They want to be seen, but not truly known. They crave your empathy, but not your mirror. And still, you remain misunderstood. Because in a world that romanticizes healing, few are prepared for what it actually demands. They say they want peace, but not the confrontation with inner chaos that peace requires. They say they want truth, but not the death of their illusions. And so your spiritual presence becomes a paradox, adored from a distance, but rejected up close. You represent the version of themselves They're afraid to become the one who tells the truth, feels deeply, holds boundaries, and refuses to abandon the soul for temporary approval. You don't play small. You don't dilute your essence just to make others comfortable. And that scares them. But there is nothing wrong with you. Your energy is not too much. Your silence is not cold. Your boundaries are not unkind. You are simply living at a frequency that exposes everything that is not real. That is a spiritual gift, but it comes with a spiritual cost. Loneliness, rejection, projection, misunderstanding. Yet you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be true to your calling. You are the wounded healer, the living soul that reminds others of their potential, whether they love you for it or resent you for it. Keep your light strong. Hold your mirror steady. And never forget, the right souls will not only stay, they will rise with you. If your presence brings healing, but not everyone embraces it, that's not your burden to carry. Stay rooted in your light. For more insights on spiritual energy and inner growth, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss what's coming next. 7. You chose truth, and truth always comes with a cost. You stopped bending. Stop twisting your truth just to be palatable. You no longer diluted your essence to make others comfortable. And in that moment, something sacred happened. Your soul took over. Choosing the truth was never about rebellion. It was a return to the core of who you are beneath the conditioning, the expectations, the subtle contracts of compliance that society teaches us to sign with a smile. Carl Jung once said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries." But most people can't bear that kind of integration because it demands the death of illusion. It requires walking away from personas and identities that once offered safety. You, however, chose to confront the falsehoods within and around you. And that choice, though deeply spiritual, came with a price most are unwilling to pay. Truth isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause or approval. In fact, it often arrives with silence, distance, and the kind of loneliness that only the spiritually awakened understand. When you chose alignment over attachment, people began to fall away. Not because you pushed them, but because your light became too bright for their shadows. Your authenticity, your spiritual clarity, disrupted the equilibrium they maintained through denial. They didn't reject you. They rejected the mirror your soul had become. They called your boundaries cold. They labeled your insight as arrogance. But what they truly feared was the reflection you held up, because once you live in truth, you make it impossible for others to hide in pretense. That is the quiet power of the awakened soul. It doesn't scream, it simply shines, and that shine exposes everything. You didn't lose people. You lost the illusion that they were truly connected to you. You lost the version of them that only loved the version of you that stayed small. You began speaking in frequencies instead of words, vibrating in presence instead of performance. And that shift disoriented those who needed you to stay predictable. But spiritual alignment doesn't come with instructions. It comes with fire. It burns away everything in your life that is no longer in resonance. And the more you let go, the more you find what cannot be taken from you. Your essence, your soul, your divine clarity. Jung's wisdom pierces through this experience when he said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important." That's the wound of the awakened man. Not absence, but misattunement. You feel unseen, not because you are invisible, but because you are now vibrating at a truth others are not yet ready to face. Stillness is mistaken for coldness, discernment for judgment, silence for arrogance. But what people don't understand is that your withdrawal is not bitterness, it's protection. You are no longer willing to explain your evolution to those committed to misunderstanding it. You are no longer handing your soul to those who only want your compliance. You have become sacred ground, and not everyone is meant to walk with you there. That is not pride. That is clarity. When the soul begins to lead, your life no longer revolves around being chosen. It becomes about being aligned. And that shift transforms rejection into redirection, misunderstanding into spiritual refinement. You are not here to be accepted by the masses. You are here to embody the truth most are still afraid to admit exists. And that calling, though isolating, is divine. Because while truth costs you comfort, illusions cost you your soul, and you, brave one, finally chose to stop paying that price. To affirm your commitment to living in truth, even when it costs you comfort or connection, comment below, "I choose truth over illusion." Let your words be a light for others on this path. And if this message speaks to your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another moment of spiritual wisdom. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the unseen struggles of the spiritually awake. If this message resonated with you, know that your path, though often misunderstood, is sacred and deeply meaningful. You're not alone, and your inner truth is a gift to this world, even if not everyone can see it yet. If you found value in today's video, please give it a like, share it with someone who might need this reminder, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming insights on transformation, soul growth, and higher consciousness. Until next time, stay grounded, stay true, and stay awake.